Right. So I have worked at the Earth Foundation and I worked at my other places where I've done research. I would say the biggest reason for systematic inequality in opportunities would be money, access to an income. So I think that has so many, there are many different reasons for why that happens, but I think the biggest kind of thing is economics, and economics means money. So when you don't have access to money, you also automatically, your power in society or your power to kind of like ask for what you need, I believe goes down. And I think because women here are relying a lot on other people's incomes to support themselves. So also like women who get married and they'll be like, okay, my husband will earn for me, or they get a certain allowance from their husbands, or their fathers earn for them. And they're basically doing all the housework, but the housework that they're doing is real work, but they're not being paid for it, right? Like raising a family is not easy. It's like a full-time job. You don't have hours for it, but you're doing a lot of work for it, but you're not getting paid for it. So who's getting the advantage? You're supporting someone, you're supporting a household to, like a male member to go out and work, but you are not getting any monetary benefit from that. So what happens then is that you're still dependent on someone else. So I believe that economics is like a really big thing, and I think really closely tied to that is the legal system. So I think that our government also has a lot of work to do when it comes to implementing laws that protect women, and also encourage the implementation of laws, right? So let's say like the government passes like a domestic violence bill. Have you guys heard of it? The domestic violence bill, right? So you can implement, you can pass it in the parliament. You can have everyone vote for it and pass it. But if you're not going to implement it, like if someone comes, if a woman is, let's say like someone beats a woman up, like her husband beats her up, and she goes and reports it to the police station, but the police isn't helpful, or they say कि नहीं बाजी तो घर का मामला है, that means that your law is not being implemented on the ground. You guys get what I mean? So that also is a really big reason why I think women lack a lot of opportunities, and because there isn't any law to protect them in the first place. So I think these are the two reasons I would say.
Third question.
Okay. My question for you is that, in your opinion, which singular course of action can bring up the equality of opportunity for the women the most?
Okay, singular action. I really believe that women need to understand and realize that they have skills that they can use in the real world and get paid for them, right? So I think a lot of that is to do with confidence, and I think, people generally struggle with confidence at any age, whether you're 15 or whether you're 45, or 80 even. But I think women in general, because they're not encouraged to go out of the house, in our culture overall, they lack the confidence to go and seek opportunities. I think there's a big kind of like deficit when it comes to understanding what you're good at, and then being able to go out and sell yourself for your skill and get paid for it. So I think a lot of it has to do with skill building. I think what we need to do is like skill building for women in particular, and then helping them access opportunities that are based and connected to their skill set. So yeah, and I think the government and even like private organizations have a really big part to play in skill building.
So the next question is, what are your views about an industry that discourages women?
Which industry?
It could be any industry.
Do you have one in mind that you'd like me to talk about? Because there's so many, right? Like, and I also,
for instance, the business industries.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think in Pakistan now, because I've also before Haq, I was working with with an HR consultancy. So what I'm seeing now is that there is a little shift in, they call it D&I, which is diversity and inclusion. That's what the tagline is. It's called D&I, diversity and inclusion, where they're trying to increase women's participation, like hiring more women in the workforce, and maybe like having more safe spaces for women in offices. But I'm going to say that this is only because it's like a big organization like Engro or like Unilever. It's not because it's like any small organization. And I think that what they're doing is a lot of like dikhawa, to show like, oh, like we are supporting women. But I don't really think that they're focusing on the real issues, which are equal pay, right? Stuff like supporting women as they become parents and mothers, including maternity and paternity leave, medical and insurance, like health benefits, and then even like training and development, right? Like, so training and development means that when you hire someone, you also make sure that they learn as, in their role. And I think that there aren't enough women who are going up the ladder to become more senior executives. I think you can hire like 100 women and say, I did my diversity quota, but if those women are being paid, like less, then I don't think that's really, inclusivity. So that's kind of like my view on it. I'm also more pessimistic, but I think I'm right.
Or where they also get discouraged because of less paid.
Yeah. It goes back to money. Honestly, a lot of this empowerment stuff, most of it, it's to do with power and money, because money and power are so interlinked. Because with money is when you have more power, you're able to make decisions for yourself and you're able to like ask for what you want. And I don't mean that in a greedy way, like paisa has everything, but it's just more like, it gives you a little like control over other situations.
Okay, Miss, one last question we would like to ask you is, according to you, what are the barriers and obstacles to achieving gender equality?
So many. I think number one is just, I don't think people are looking inwards enough. Like, I think everyone is saying about gender equality, it's not me, whether it's a man or a woman, okay? Everyone's kind of looking at, oh, I'm not the problem, it's someone else who's the problem. And I think the danger with that is that if everyone says that, then who's going to take accountability? Who's going to really look inwards and say, how am I adding to the problem? So I think that's a cultural thing. So I think that's one thing. I think number two is that generally I think safety, like women's safety is a big barrier to women actually going out of the house and like being able to go and pursue an education. And I think if you make things safe, then I think you will really automatically have women just really feel so much more comfortable doing a lot of things. And I think lastly, would be mobility. Mobility basically means just like being able to go out of the house and do stuff. And that could be because families don't, encourage their girls to do things outside the house, or because it's too expensive, or because it's not safe. So when you're not able to be mobile, you don't know what's happening in the world, and you're kind of in your home. And I think access to opportunities then becomes a bit more limited. So at the top of my head, I think these are 3 things, but there's so many more. And I think a lot of it is to do with like men, of course. I think men really need to like step up and say, we have to like call other men out. If a man hears another man like say something that's demeaning or has a very like, very weird belief about women, I think silence now that time is gone, to be silent. I think now is the time when you hear someone say something, you must call them out. And it doesn't mean that you fight with them and say, oh my God, like, I'm going to pick on you. But I think to really like help raise awareness about the fact that these things just like nothing's going to change if no one is going to hold anyone accountable. So I think men have to be open to the fact that yes, it's going to be tough for them to acknowledge that they have a very important part to play, and they have to have the courage to call other men out when they see things that are not acceptable anymore. And I think that goes for like our generation, your generation, even like my parents, for example, or uncles and aunties, right? Like all the conversations that you hear sometimes, at least I hear. I'm just like this can't happen now. It's too late. It's 2021. We have to stop this. So that's kind of like my perspective on it.
Okay, Miss, thank you a lot. It was great having you.
Okay, great.